These are little moves that we can do to create a lot of leverage and crush. So just to recap, anybody that showed up late, here were the 7 tips we went through. Number one, have access to ADP, especially for your offline drafts. Okay. Online drafts, you'll have it right in front of you. Offline drafts have your rankings here and have ADP or the consensus, like Fantasy Pros rankings, because that's basically ADP, right? Just have some sort of vanilla version, like consensus Fantasy Pros is the most vanilla rankings ever. Just have the most vanilla version of what people are doing so that you can see that and you'll know, okay, these are the guys I like. Here's where everyone else is probably going to draft them. And you know that where you need to reach or not, right? Because there's a big difference between correct rankings and correct draft, right? And here's a great example. Last year, Nico Collins finished as a wide receiver 12. If you ranked him as the wide receiver 12 in some sort of draft challenge contest, then that would have scored you a lot of draft challenge contest points, right? But if you drafted him that way, you wasted a ton of value because he was going off the board as a wide receiver 50. You didn't have to take him as a wide receiver 12. I would go as far as to say that if you draft him as a wide receiver 12 and he finished as a wide receiver 12, you actually made a bad draft pick. Yeah, it's crazy as that sounds. You did because you could have taken him 5 rounds later, comfortably 5 rounds later, or at least 2 or 3, right? If he's the wide receiver 50 and you rank him 12, you shouldn't be drafting him 12. You should be drafting him like 25. Okay. So that's the difference. And you got to keep track of that. Keep that in your mind. All right. So have ADP available. Tip number 2, best available player based on your format early on. Don't get too cute trying to go force, you know, zero RB. Don't force yin and yang tight end. Yin and yang tight end is my strategy. It's a backup plan. If you can get Travis Kelsey at a cheap price below ADP, obviously do that, right? Like if you can get a stud tight end for a good price, that's always been the plan. Yin and yang tight end is a backup plan. Zero RB is a backup plan. Late round quarterback, wait on wide receiver. These are backup plans. And know how to handle the runs so you don't get caught up in that. That's tip number 3. Know how to handle these positional runs. If the QBs are flying off the board and you like one, take one in that group. If the QBs are flying off the board and you don't like them, do not force a quarterback pick. My goodness, that will ruin your draft. All right. So know how to handle those runs and know the late round targets. That's tip 4. Know all the late targets for zero RB. Know the late targets for yin and yang tight end. Keep them in your back pocket. Then you can be flexible. You don't need to force RBs early if you have the late RBs you like. Conversely, sometimes I go through and I look at these late round RBs that all the zero RB guys like, and I'm like, I don't like that guy. A lot of times I look at these mid to late RBs and I say, I don't like any of these dudes. So I'm actually going to draft RBs early. And, I'm going to lean into that. I like some wide receivers later. I like some tight ends later. Lean into that if that's the way you feel. Know the late round targets so that you can pivot to those strategies. Never sit down saying, I'm going zero RB today. That's wrong. But you can get up from your seat and say, hey, man, the wide receiver value, QB value, tight end value was there. I had to pivot to zero RB. That's how you be a draft master. That's how you be like water. Okay. Tip number 5, roster construction, right? This goes hand in hand with what we just talked about. Your bench is for fixing the weak spots in your lineup. Your bench is for fixing the weak spots in your lineup. It's not for just putting 100 wide receivers there. It's not for putting 100 running backs there, unless you're weak at wide receiver or weak at running back. I see too many people with best ball brain just drafting the first 8 of 9 picks they draft are wide receivers, and now they just have a bunch of good wide receivers on their bench. That's not the way to roll. Like, you have some sort of roster construction. And tip number 6 is about bench balance itself, right? Running backs, if you're going zero RB, you need to have a balance of running backs. You need to have guys you can start, right? You need to have guys that you can actually put into your lineup, and you also need to have the upside picks. You don't want just a bunch of boring, pass catching backs, just a ton of Antonio Gibson and Justice Hills. And you also can't just have only handcuffs and only like IR stashes because then you'll have no one to play. Balance, 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 balance. That's tip 6. Tip number 7, the last one here is know your format. Know your format for your last pick, for your rules, right? The league rules. Know if you have IR spots. Know if you can drop your kicker. Know if you can add players that have not played yet and drop players that have played and like to get extra looks on Thursday and Friday. Know that on FFPC, you can actually change your lineup week 1 after the Thursday and Friday games. I'm not kidding. The contest technically doesn't start till Sunday because they want to have drafts on Saturday. So if you go to myffpc.com, use promo code Coop, that's something that a lot of people don't know. That you get a free look. You can draft the Eagles defense and see how they do, and then either start them or add a different defense. That's a crazy tip. On Yahoo, in a lot of leagues, you can drop your kicker, stash a guy from Thursday or Friday, watch them play, drop them for a kicker, no harm, no foul. Or if they go off, keep them and drop somebody else for a kicker. So know these rules. Those are my top 7 rules for this year. And if you want my rankings, grab a copy of the Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide or the cheat sheet now. That is available right now, right this moment. So go get that, get set up. All right.